Hey everybody, it's Steve with Sky194 and appreciate you taking the time to visit and check out my video. And it's been forever it seems like, but I'm finally trying to get back to my pros and cons. And today it is the AMG, the 2015 AMG, and it will also go through the 2020 AMG EVO. So this is probably the longest of the pros and cons, and I hope you enjoy it. Any comments or feedback are appreciated. So let's get this started. Of course, we're going to go over all the pros and cons. I'm going to go through the 2015 AMG first and go through all the pros and cons in that, and driving tips and setup tips. And then we'll start on the 2020 EVO. Okay, so here I'm racing here at Misano, and this is one of the better setups I have for this car. So that's why I wanted to compare this car with the EVO. And then we'll go over the setup at the end, and I made a few little adjustments because this is a 2020, because they do have the single older AMG for the 2020 cars. So this is 2020. It's just older AMG, and so I made a few little adjustments to the setup, and of course I will post this setup and the one for the EVO in the description. And we'll go over both of those setups also. So let's get started. And again, the cons in the beginning. Fuel mileage has got to be probably the number one. This thing is just definitely not easy on the MPGs, and it makes good power, so it eats fuel. That's pretty much that simple. It's one of the worst as far as mileage. So that's one of the big hindrances of it, especially in the, if you're going for the hour race or an hour stint, you're pretty much either going to barely make it, and you got to completely top your tank off. Second con is it can be moody and tricky especially for a front engine car. And I put stability. I mean, it can be also on the stability of it can be a little tricky sometimes. Especially like I said, for more of a mid-engine car, or not a mid-engine, but a front engine. Even though they say it's kind of a front mid-engine, but it just can have its little attitude sometimes, and so you just gotta watch it. The third is tire wear and overheating the tires. I mean, the AMG's known for cooking the tires, and so you really got to have a pretty good setup to keep that at bay without overdoing it, to keep them in check. The fourth is a transmission, or it could be electronics. It could be, you could go both. It's just with this, it seems like, when you're really getting aggressive with downshifts, and this is done over, multiple wheels and things that I've had, so I know it's not that, and I got a Fanatic V2 wheel with the magnetic shifters. But sometimes it just does not want to go into the lower gears. You got to click it again to get it to go into lower gear, and especially going down into second or first. And it's probably, maybe it's like a save, an engine save or something, or it doesn't want to downshift too high RPM. It might be that, but all I know is it doesn't want to do it. And sometimes it can really mess you up if you're really coming into a corner hard and you're trying to, go through the gears, and it's usually always the first and second gear where it doesn't want to go. So again, that's definitely a pretty good con, because it really can blow your lap. And then also, to kind of go with that, which is a minor con, but it is a con, is the traction control and ABS are pretty basic. Since it's a 2015 car, which shows EVO is still based off of that, but I mean, 2015 car, really the traction control and all that is pretty basic. It works okay for me, so I don't have an issue with it, but you just got to treat it a little bit different than some of the other GT3 cars. And we'll go through that on the other tips, on the setup tips. But you just need to be able to recognize that it's unique and different. And especially when the rain I've had really good luck in the damp and the rain with this car, but you just got to back it down a little bit more and, you know, coast through the corners more and things like that. You can't, you know, you really got to take the aggression out of it or it'll definitely bite you. But I've had really good luck in the rain with the AMG. So let's now go to the pros, which are pretty basic. It's got a lot of them, but I mean, the acceleration, it's in the top half of the field. It's got to be in the top 3 or 4 cars. It's got killer acceleration, which is really good. Braking, it's got to be in the top half of the field. It's got really good braking, which, you know, most front engine cars do. This is no exception. The gear ratios on the AMG are not like awesome in places, but they fit almost every place. They are not like you go to a track and they're just out to lunch. So I really think that it's got some, you know, it's a good in between, and it might not be great, but it's good everywhere. So that's a good pro. Of course, the car's good everywhere. So that's another pro. You know, I mean, no matter where you go, what track, you know, it's going to be competitive, and it's just a matter of you getting used to it, the driver, and having a decent setup under it. Of course, the sounds, to me, I know that's subjective, but I think it's got some killer sounds, and just one of the great sounding cars in ACC. So that's always a pro. And lastly, the front splitter is really great because there's only 2 cars in ACC, this car and the Porsche, that have a front splitter that you can adjust. And it's really nice to do that, just to, you know, when you're just trying to make those fine adjustments, maybe to get a little bit more feel out of the front or less, or you can back it down. You can really make them minute adjustments, and it really can make a difference on being confident on, you know, pushing the car. So I really like that, and like I said, there's only this car and the Porsche that has that. So let's go to the setup tips. The setup tips in driving. First, it needs a little more wing than most GT3 cars. It's just, that's, you know, it just, in most instances, especially on a lot of technical tracks, it just needs a little bit more wing. It also needs more diff preload than pretty much any front engine car. It's probably just because the engine puts out a good amount of power, and, you know, if you get one wheel spinning, it's going to make the car, coming off a corner, obviously it's going to make the car unstable. So it's basically just needs a little bit more diff preload on the diff. Third, use the traction control on the setup. I never have it below 4 on traction control, and a lot of times I have it at 5. It doesn't hurt your times, and it really can help you be consistent. I mean, even if it hurts a teeny bit on the time, it's going to really help you in the long run, because you're going to be able to be more consistent and hit your laps lap after lap, instead of hitting a great lap and then being out to lunch. So that's really and also with the basic traction control and ABS that is in the AMG, you know, that's, you know, some of them you don't need that much, but this one, between the output and the combination of the two, you know, the electronics and the output of the motor, you definitely need to run it on the higher side. Also, just watch the drafting and the understeer in the corner. So what I'm talking about is basically like if you're really behind somebody and you're tucked up under their rear and you're getting ready to go into a corner, you're definitely going to have some understeer. The car has, you know, a little less downforce on the front, and when you're tucked up behind somebody, it has even less downforce on the front. So you really need to be aware of that, because if you go into that, one, you're not going to brake as good, and second of all, you're going to hit the corner and you're going to understeer and you're going to either wreck or you're going to slide off. And so you got to be really careful and just be mindful of that. And last tip is use the next gear. You know, the next gear up if you can. You know, I mean, depending on the track, you know, there's going to be you know, tracks or corners where you can go either, let's say, second or third, or first or second. Always pick the higher gear. The way the acceleration is with this, you'll do better. Just like this corner here, in some cars, I do it in first. This one I'm doing in second. It's just faster that way. I might be able to even do this corner in second, but I just do it in first to get it to rotate better. But it just, like I said, this car has a little bit lower, you know, has a little bit lower gears. So, and it's got good acceleration. So if you can use the next higher gear, go ahead and do it. And I'm sure, one, it'll be easier to come off the corner, and second, you'll probably drop in time. You know, you'll do better in your times. So, because, you know, you'll be better on your tires. It's just better all the way around if you can do that. So those are all the pros and cons for the older GT3, the 2015. And now, while we're here, I'm going to go over the timetable and also go over, and that's the end of the race, and I'll go over the setup while we have it right here. And I think the car ran really well. I, you know, moved myself up to second in just a short little race. And again, this is a 2020 tire. So there's my timetables here. I had a couple outs. But, you know, I had a 30, 35, 34.99, low 35. Kind of messed this lap up. And then I ran my fast lap at the end at 34.58. So, I mean, that's, you know, and I ran in practice, I ran a little faster than that. I think I was running a couple tenths faster than that in practice. So, you know, it's there, definitely there, and very capable, and feels good doing it. That's why I picked this track, just because it's probably one of the best setups I have for the car. Is you know, at least one of the top 3 I have for it here at Misano. So let's go over the setup. And the setup's, the left front's 25.4, left rear's 26, right front is 26.6, and the right rear is 26.7. The toe is -0.1, and the camber is -3.5 on the left front and -3.4 on the right front. The caster is 12.5. And on the rear, the toe is 0.12, with the camber at -2.8 on the left and -2.7 on the right. The electronics are 5 and 5. Fuel, I had 65 liters when I did this setup, but I ran this race at 50 liters, which is still probably double what they had in the car. There's the tires. That's what I ran with 10 minutes, and it was, you know, no issues at all. Pretty good wear, almost even, just as well, as close as you can get. Mechanical, I had 8 on the anti-roll bar, 61 on the brake bias. Steering ratio is turned all the way down. Springs on the front are 155,000, with an 1,100 bump stop rate on the left front and a 1,000 bump stop rate on the right front. The bump stop range on the left front is 1, and on the right it's 3. On the rear, the springs are 107,000, with a bump stop rate of 600 on the left rear and 500 on the right rear, and the bump stop range is 5 on the left rear and 10 on the right rear. Anti-roll bar is 4, and the preload is 90. Now, you could do 90 or 100, so, you know, if you feel like it's a little bit rotating a little more than you want, you can go to 100, but I kept it at 90. Shocks on the front are 7.477, and on the rear, they're 7.478. It's almost the same. Aero, I have 49 on the front, 78 on the rear, with a 7 rear wing and a 6 for the splitter on the front, and a 4 and a 3 in the brake ducts. And the front aero variation is 0.5. So that is, now when I put the same exact setup on the EVO, it basically had a half a point, basically 0.5 more to the front. So, I mean, I've loaded the exact same setup here on the 2020 AMG EVO, and that's just the difference in the balance of the car. It basically has more front arrow, more front arrow than the older AMG. So it basically, and that's not just here. That's any track. I mean, I took it to multiple tracks and did the same thing, and it has still it's Monza was the same way, even a high-speed track. I mean, it's basically a half 0.5 more on the 2020 EVO for the front arrow variation. So that's why, I mean, you can drive it. I mean, you could take one setup and go to the other and drive it, and it'll be all right. But it's I drove it, but I couldn't get the times out of it because that makes a difference. So even though it did okay, but still was off on, this car was actually faster than the EVO because I couldn't, it was had too much front end grip. So that is the setup. So now let's go and we'll go do this. So there's a setup for that. And again, I will put them in the description. So now let's start on the 2020 AMG EVO. Now, if I didn't mention it before, both races with the two AMGs, the AI was at 100 and the aggression was at 100 also. So I don't think I mentioned that before. Those are my normal settings, but basically, for people that haven't seen some of my other videos, just want to make sure I put that out there. Basically, I'm not going to say the same, most of the same stuff that's pros and cons for the regular, the 2015 AMG is the same pros and cons for the EVO with a few differences. And that's what we'll go over with this. Like I talked about before, the EVO has 0.5 more arrow to the front, or more front arrow variation than the 2015. So that means, it has a little bit better front end feel than the standard 2015, I think. And you have to the setup has to be balanced a little bit different than the 2015 because it has more front end grip and more front end arrow. So one thing is different is you have a little bit more control if you're drafting and you don't have that understeer going into a corner. If you're really tucked in behind somebody, it's not as prevalent on the EVO as it was on the 2015, and that's again just because there's a little bit more there to begin with. And again, the cars are still the chassis are the same chassis. They are, basically it's just a front nose overhaul on the EVO. It's not like a complete new car or anything, just a few little upgrades here and there. And also, this is just my opinion. I don't know this for a fact, but I tend to believe that they made some small suspension geometry adjustments, just because when I compare both cars with the same setups, this one doesn't. The EVO wants just a teeny bit more negative camber than the 2015 AMG. So I mean, neither one of them have a lot of negative camber like a Audi or a Lamborghini or those kinds of cars. They usually are the least amount of negative camber out of pretty much almost all the cars. But the EVO does take a little bit more, likes a little bit more than the older AMG. So, and then I've also seen, with the tire wear and things like that, it seems to be a little bit more consistent with the EVO than it is on the 2015. So again, I'm wondering, again, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm tending to believe that they might have made some small geometry adjustments on the EVO, and that's what changed those things, because they're definitely not the same. They're close, but they're not the same. And again, with the EVO, both of the cars, they don't like a lot of spring in the front, but it seems like the EVO doesn't mind it a little more than the older AMG, where if you put too stiff a spring on the front, it's just horrible. It's just understeers and it's just terrible. But the EVO seems to deal with it a little bit better than the standard, than the 2015. So those are some of the small differences. You know, again, all the things, the pros and the cons, are all pretty much the same for both cars. Again, with this one, with the wing setup tips, the wing, it's, if anything, you almost got to put one click more wing in this because it has more front grip. Now, if you need the more front grip and you can do without the wing, then that's fine. But at certain places, compared to the standard AMG, you're probably going to need to put, you know, one more click in the wing, or you have the ride height in the rear, you have to knock it down one or two to basically do the same thing. So again, this, because it has, you know, more front end grip, you have to balance it out, otherwise the back end just doesn't want to cooperate. And of course the preload is the same. You know, you still have to put roughly the same. It might be one click different than the regular, than the 2015, but in a lot of instances it's the same. And this setup is the same as the other. The preload's the same. So, and I'm sure in other ones it would be a little different. Now, I did run the car at some other tracks, and like I ran at Monza, and pretty much ran equal times, pretty much within a tenth of a second of each other. And that's even with the EVO had one more click of wing in it than the older AMG. So again, it's just so close. It's just depending. You know, you just got to be able to drive it through the corner harder than the standard, than this 2015. I mean, it's got better corner entry than the 2015 AMG. So that an initial turn in from the extra aero and you know, weight or whatever it is over the front of the car, basically, you know, the aero variants, basically you can take advantage of that, and you can go the corner entry and middle of the corner, you should be able to go through there a little bit better than the 2015. And that's just and that's where the EVO basically gets the difference between it and its, you know, older brother. But other than that, everything else is pretty much the same. So at some tracks, it's probably going to make bigger differences than others. At Monza, I don't really see it making maybe a difference over a long stint over tire wear. That I could see, because I think it has a better balance than the 2015. But as far as overall speed, I don't really see it being any different. I don't see the EVO being any faster as far as ultimate speed for one lap or a couple laps or whatever. I just don't. But over a longer period, it might have better tire wear, so you have more consistency, and also better, a tighter group of lap times instead of having a drop off. That I could see. And that's probably what they were trying to accomplish with the EVO, which I think they did. It's definitely, they improved where it needed to be improved, and pretty much left everything else alone. Of course, you know, it's still the worst thing at the fuel mileage, but that's what you get when you got a good motor in it, and you know, it just, that's the way it is. I mean, it would be nice if they could improve the efficiency of it a little bit, but you know, it's the same as its older brother. We will go over the timetables, and I will also go over the setup on this one. Let's run to we only got 2 laps left. I just wanted to show these laps in the car instead of outside. My best is a 1:34.63 right now, so that's, you know, it's a decent time. Now I think the other one was 1:34.5 something, so I mean, again, they're close. I only see maybe a tenth or so difference, maybe 2 at the very, very most. And that's just here. At other tracks, like I said, longer tracks, it might not be any difference in the short term. but I can tell right through here the car definitely just it just rotates and goes right in the corner compared to where the other one I kind of had to put more input to do it. And right here it would just go right in the corner. It almost where I had to catch it because it almost went too fast compared to what the older one, the 2015. And I think it's better when these braking and turning like up here, right through here, than the other 2015. The EVO is better through there. It's better when you're doing that braking and turning because you have a little bit more grip on the front and, of course, on the rear. And actually, I think I have one more click on the wing on this car than I do the 2015. So it actually has, a little bit more wing in it to balance it out, and I'm still running, it feels really planted, really good. And that was a 134.42. So, I mean, that's faster than I ran in the 2015. And it's in that race. See, it just turns right. Even if you're behind somebody, it still just turns. It doesn't have any kind of understeer to it at all. Whether you're behind somebody or not, it might affect it maybe a little, but nothing compared to like the 2015. And I probably could have gone in here and made a move, but I didn't. It was a good race. Both races were fun. Again, I really have a good time with these races. I can't wait to get my championship going, my British championship. So that'll be starting here soon. But I want to get these pros and cons going since I'm so far. I haven't done one in a while, and I had the 2 AMGs, and the last one was a 134.81, and that's fighting with the Lamborghini. But basically, want to get these pros and cons because I know that I've kind of forgot about those with everything going on. So let's go over the timetables and the setup. There's the timetables here. I had all clean laps, 35s. There's a 34.8, 34.6, 34.4, and a 34.8. So to me, again, it's easier to be consistent with the EVO. And that's another, pro to it compared to the AMG, the 2015. I just think it's just with the improvements that they made, it's just more inherent to be consistent than the 2015. And that, of course, means time because, I mean, if you got a few laps here that are 2 or 3 tenths slower in the 2015, I mean, that's, makes a difference overall. So I think that's, again, where the EVO really comes the advantage over the standard or the 2015 AMG. But as you can see here, that's about the same. And right here is about 1.5 tenths right here. So that's, again, I could have been even lower than that if I would have just had this one sector down here. So, again, the performance is definitely there. The setup, let's go over that. 25.6 left front, 26.2 left rear, 26.6 right front, and 26.8 right rear. Toe is -0.1 with the camber at -3.6 on the left front, -3.5 on the right front. The caster is 12.5. The toe on the rear is 0.12 with the camber at -3 on the left rear and -2.9 on the right rear. Electronics are 4 and 5. Fuel, I had 50 liters, but I did the setup when I had 65. There is the wear on the tires, perfect. There's no pretty much really good there. Pretty good here. No issues there at all. Mechanical, 8 on the roll bar, 60 on the brake bias, all the way down on the steering ratio. The springs in the front were 155,000 with an 1100 bump stop rate and a 1 bump stop range on the left, and a 1,000 on the right front bump stop rate and a 3 bump stop range, which is about the same, I think, as on the 2015. The springs in the rear were 107,000 with a 600 bump stop rate on the left rear and a 5 bump stop range. And on the right rear, the bump stop rate is 500 and a 10 bump stop range. Anti-roll bar is 4, and the preload on the diff is 90. So pretty much all that is the same, I think, as the 2015. Except the brake bias, I'm able to be a little more aggressive because it has more downforce on it. Shocks are the same. On the front, 7477, and on the rear, 7478. So those are the same. And again, this car does, the EVO does have an improvement in riding over the bumps than the 2015 AMG. Not huge, but it's definitely better. Aero at 49 in the front. Now this is where it's different. 78 in the rear with an 8 rear wing and a 7 splitter and a 4 and a 3 in the brake ducts, and the front aero variation is 0.5. So again, I mean, it's you got to change it up just a little bit. That's the same, I think, but the rear wing is, I got 1 click more on the rear wing, where the other one is 1 click less, basically. And I think this is one little bit different on the front splitter. So again, it works really well. There's not huge differences, just, you know, minor improvements, but it does make a difference, especially over a long stint. Definitely does make a difference, and I definitely think the car is more consistent than the 2015. And I sure hope you enjoyed this with the pros and cons with the AMG, the 2015 and the 2020. And again, I will put both setups in the description, a link in the description. And please, I would really appreciate any support for the channel, any comments or feedback, and also if you could hit the thumbs up and subscribe, I really would appreciate it. It really helps with all that YouTube stuff. And I sure hope you visit often and visit soon. So y'all take care, and we'll see you the next time.